Selena Torres, a former Navy SEAL, did just that. No crime, no threat, no disturbance. Just a black woman with two well-trained German shepherds on a quiet suburban street. But for Officers Mays and Reed, that was reason enough. They followed her, tracked her, confronted her. Not once, not twice, but over and over again, raising suspicion where there was none, pushing her, questioning her, waiting for her to flinch. Until one morning, they crossed the line, guns in hand, veiled threats. A second patrol boat was waiting nearby. It wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. Selena Torres wasn't just trained. She was prepared. She had footage, witnesses, a past they didn't expect. And when they tried to silence her, she went public. This isn't just a story about police harassment. This is what happens when a system built on power and prejudice targets the wrong woman, and the truth strikes back. Watch until the end. Because the moment you see what they tried to hide, you'll never forget her name. Subscribe now, hit the bell. Because what happens next will change everything. The morning air carried the scent of dew and distant pine, the kind that lingered just a little longer in the early spring. It was the kind of day most people wouldn't remember, a Thursday without consequence. The suburban street, tucked between rows of aging maples and modest ranch-style homes, whispered of peace. Birds chattered lazily overhead, and the occasional hum of a leaf blower buzzed in the distance. Selena Torres liked mornings like these, not because they were quiet, but because she was. At 44, her gait was steady, deliberate. There was no need to rush. With each step, her boots made soft contact with the sidewalk, never dragging. Her two dogs, Titan and Echo, moved on either side of her, perfect in sync. They were German shepherds, lean and disciplined, not pets, but partners. Their leashes rested in her grip more like suggestions than restraints. They didn't need commands. A flick of her wrist, a breath, a glance, everything between them was silent coordination. The world saw a woman walking her dogs, but the world rarely sees clearly. Selena had been retired from active duty for nearly 5 years. She didn't talk about what she did before, the missions, the deployments, the cold efficiency she'd been trained into. Most of her neighbors assumed she was a personal trainer or a canine handler. That suited her just fine. She didn't owe anyone her history, and she had no intention of sharing it with them. That life was behind her, or so she told herself. She turned onto a quieter street, where the trees arched above like an old cathedral, filtering sunlight through budding leaves. Titan sniffed at a patch of grass and looked up. His ears flicked once. Echo, the more sensitive of the two, stiffened slightly beside her. Selena noticed, but said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward the street behind her. Empty, no footsteps, no sudden movement. Still, her body shifted almost imperceptibly, her center of gravity low, arms relaxed, her awareness broadening. Not panicking, not reacting, just listening. Years of combat training didn't teach paranoia. It taught precision. But this was probably nothing. A squirrel, a rustle in the branches, or maybe just that quiet little whisper she'd learned to trust, the one that had saved her more times than she could count. She glanced at Titan. His posture had returned to normal. No growling, no tension, just curiosity. Echo followed his lead, tail resuming its easy sway. Still, Selena's eyes swept the street again. Across the road, a man knelt by his mailbox, sorting through junk flyers and bills. He looked up as she passed. Their eyes met. His glance wasn't hostile, but it wasn't warm, either. A flicker of hesitation, the kind she'd grown accustomed to. Maybe it was the dogs. Perhaps it was her posture. Maybe it was her skin. She nodded politely. He didn't nod back. Echo brushed her knee gently, sensing the shift in her breath. Selena let out a slow exhale and moved on. This was her new life, and she'd fought hard to carve it out. She'd bought this home with cash. No loans, no mortgage, no ties. She didn't go to block parties. She didn't ask to join the neighborhood watch. She kept to herself, and in return, most people left her alone. But now and then, someone would watch her just a bit too long. A clerk at the pharmacy would smile too tightly. A jogger would cross to the other side of the street. A patrol car would slow down. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to remind her that she was being seen. And lately, the reminders were getting more frequent. A subtle shift. A tightening of space. Titan's leash tugged slightly as he pulled toward a low hedge. Selena let him sniff, her eyes still tracking movement around her. Echo stayed close to her side, her tongue flicking out to taste the wind. Selena turned the next corner and came to a stop. There, parked in the shadow of a withered sycamore, was a black and white patrol car. Its engine idled. The driver sat still. No lights, no door opening. Just waiting. A normal person might have kept walking. A normal person might have assumed the officers were finishing paperwork or responding to a call nearby. But Selena Torres was not regular, and she had seen that car before. Same unit number, same dent in the fender. The same sticker is peeling from the back window. This was the third time in 8 days. She didn't change pace, didn't cross the street. She simply walked forward, her posture smooth, unthreatening, but unmistakably confident. The car's windows were tinted, too dark to see the faces inside, but she didn't need to see. She could feel the stare. Titan's head turned toward the vehicle. Echo gave a single sharp exhale. Selena clicked her tongue softly. 1, 2, and the dogs fell into tighter formation, their steps matching hers exactly. The car didn't move. She passed it slowly, eyes forward. Not a glance, not a hesitation. It wasn't fear that kept her steady. It was control. But as she passed the front bumper, she heard the unmistakable sound. Click. The window on the passenger side rolled down just a few inches, enough to let her hear the voice. "Nice dogs," the voice said. Male, young, light tone, but rehearsed. Selena didn't stop, didn't answer. She didn't need to. That one sentence was enough. It wasn't a compliment. It was a probe. Titan's ears pressed back. Echo's head tilted toward the voice, her muscles tightening. Selena gave a barely audible command. Steady. The dogs obeyed. She kept walking. Behind her, the window rolled back up. The patrol car remained in place, but in her chest, Selena felt something tighten. Not fear, not anger, awareness. The kind of awareness that only came when the air got still, and you knew a storm was coming. She turned the next corner, out of sight of the cruiser. Her pace remained even, but her hand instinctively touched the small tactical pouch clipped to her belt, a habit she hadn't broken in years. And for the first time in a long time, she wondered if she ever truly left the war behind. Selena Torres had walked through minefields with steadier breath than she carried that morning. Back in her kitchen, she moved through the familiar rhythm of her post-walk routine, unclipping the dogs' harnesses, wiping their paws, rinsing out their water bowls. But the click of ceramic on metal sounded louder than usual. The fridge's hum grated on her nerves. The ceiling fan's low, slow churn seemed to echo off every wall. The patrol car hadn't followed her. It didn't need to. Its presence was a message. Titan lay curled by the back door, tail tucked, but his ears stayed upright. Echo circled the perimeter of the living room once, slowly, before finally settling beside Selena's chair. She didn't speak to them. She didn't have to. They were reading her body the way she had trained them to, the way soldiers read the wind before a sniper's shot. Selena set her coffee cup down, untouched. Her fingers drummed lightly against the edge of the table. 1 beat, 2, then stillness. She picked up her phone and pulled up the local precinct's website. The familiar loading circle spun longer than usual. Finally, it settled on a page with smiling officer profiles and community outreach blurbs. She scanned them, looking for the faces she hadn't seen but felt behind that cruiser's glass. There. Officer Daryl Mays, early 30s, tall, former military police, discharged under unclear circumstances. Friendly smile. Too friendly. And next to him, Officer Colton Reed, younger, sharper features, barely out of the academy, the kind who followed orders first and asked questions never. She stared at their photos for a long time. Then she clicked the browser closed and sat back in her chair. They weren't random. They were watching. Later that afternoon, she walked again. Not because she wanted to, but because if she let them push her off her routine, they'd win. This time she took the longer route, wound through the northern edge of the neighborhood, where the trees grew sparse and the sidewalks cracked more often than not. Her boots pressed into brittle leaves, her pace just a touch more rigid than the morning. Titan stayed close. Echo was slightly ahead, tail sweeping low like a radar. She didn't talk to anyone. The only eyes that met hers were from behind curtains or half-closed blinds. The neighbors were familiar with her by now, and most of them had decided she didn't quite belong. The sun had just begun its downward slide when the cruiser appeared again. Different location, same unit number. Parked at an odd angle near the intersection of Ashland and Croft, a subtle flex of presence, like a lion reclining, but still showing its teeth. She saw them both inside this time. Officer Mays was behind the wheel, shades on even though the sun was fading. Reed leaned back in the passenger seat, legs stretched out, chewing on a toothpick like it was a badge of courage. They saw her. And this time, they got out. Selena's hands never twitched. Her stride didn't break. But something coiled inside her. Not fear. Calculation. "Evening, ma'am," Mays called out as they approached. Selena stopped slowly, evenly, turned toward them with that blank calm the military had carved into her. "Officers," Reed smirked. "Nice night for a walk." Selena didn't respond. She didn't need to. Mays gestured toward the dogs. "Mind if we ask a few questions about them? Got a report about 2 shepherds being aggressive, just doing our due diligence." Aggressive. The word hung in the air like smoke from a slow burn. Selena arched an eyebrow. "From who?" Mays gave a half shrug. "Anonymous. Probably nothing. But we've got to follow up." She said nothing, just adjusted her grip on the leashes. Reed stepped a little closer. "What are they trained for, anyway?" Selena let a pause stretch between them. Then, "Companionship." Reed laughed softly. "That's what they're calling it now." Mays's smile flattened. "Look, we're not here to cause trouble, but you've been walking these dogs a lot lately, and some of the neighbors are uneasy." Selena kept her voice level. "Because I'm walking my dogs?" "Because they're large," Mays said, "and they respond aggressively when approached." "They respond appropriately," Selena corrected, her tone a thread sharper. "They're disciplined. If someone got too close too fast, they reacted." Reed tilted his head. "You got papers for their training?" "I do." Can we see them? Selena narrowed her eyes. Do you have a warrant? A flicker of irritation crossed Reed's face. Mays cut in quickly, smoothing his voice over like plaster on a crack. Just trying to keep the peace. That's all. Peace, Selena repeated, almost like a question. Mays nodded. You know how it is. Neighborhood like this, people get jumpy. People like me, or dogs like mine? There was silence for a moment. Reed shifted. We're just doing our jobs, ma'am. Selena looked at them both, then down at her dogs. Steady, patient, watching. So am I. There it was. A line in the dirt. They didn't cross it. Not yet. Mays stepped back. All right. Have a good night. Selena turned and walked on, but her back was hot with the weight of their gaze. She didn't need to look to know they stood there, watching her go, their silence more telling than anything they'd said. Later, she stood in her living room, staring out the window as dusk bled into night. Her phone buzzed with a message from a former contact, someone she hadn't spoken to in years but still trusted. You've drawn attention. Stay alert. Something's in motion. Selena didn't reply. She just reached for the envelope tucked into the back of her desk drawer, the one labeled, "In case everything goes sideways." Inside was a burner phone, a second ID, and a map with marked escape routes out of the city. She didn't believe in paranoia, but she believed in preparation. And tonight, she believed a storm was coming. The third morning began like any other. But that illusion didn't last. Selena Torres stepped outside before sunrise, boots crunching softly against the gravel of her driveway. The air was cool, crisp, and carried a weight she recognized, not from weather, but from atmosphere. It was the same pressure she'd felt years ago on operations right before contact. That tight, silent warning the body registers before the brain can catch up. Titan and Echo trotted beside her, perfectly in sync, their breath forming little clouds that vanished in the morning chill. She kept her movements deliberate, normal, but her senses were on high alert. The side street, which was usually empty, had a vehicle parked diagonally across from her home. Not directly across, just enough off to feign coincidence. Same cruiser, the same two men. She didn't need to see their faces to know it. They weren't even pretending anymore. She adjusted her jacket, clipped the dog's leashes tighter, and headed east. Away from them, but not out of their line of sight. If they wanted a show, they'd get one. But not the one they expected. For 3 blocks, they tailed her slowly, far enough back to deny harassment, close enough to make sure she knew. Selena stopped near a park bench, pretending to tie her bootlace. Titan sat obediently. Echo sniffed the grass, but her eyes scanned the glass reflection of a nearby storefront window. The cruiser had stopped. A moment later, the car door opened. Footsteps approached. "Morning again," Mays said. Selena didn't answer at first. She rose to her feet, brushed imaginary dirt off her knee, and faced him squarely. "Officers." "Retaking the same route," Reed added, stepping up beside his partner. "Gotta say, you're consistent." Selena's face was unreadable. Dogs like routine. Mays smirked. "You know, that's funny. I ran your plates this morning. The military tag expired 2 months ago. You know that's a ticket, right?" "It's not expired," she replied coolly. "It was renewed online. Temporary registration is in the glove box." "Well," Reed said with a chuckle, "you're just full of surprises." Selena's voice didn't change. "Are we doing traffic enforcement now? In a park?" Mays shifted, placing his hand lightly on his belt. "We're doing our job, protecting the community." Her eyes sharpened. "From what?" There was a pause. Reed stepped closer. "From uncertainty." Titan rose with a low growl. Echo mirrored him, hackles raised just slightly. Barely perceptible unless you knew what to look for. Selena didn't stop them. She didn't need to. "You're provoking my dogs," she said, calm but clipped. "Back up." "We're standing still," Mays said with a shrug. "And you're crowding a woman with 2 trained protection dogs while armed. I'd say that qualifies as escalation." Reed scoffed. "You saying they're attack dogs?" "No," Selena replied. "I'm saying they're intelligent enough to know the difference between a friend and a threat." A long beat passed. The tension stretched, humming, seconds from snapping. "Mind if we ask where you're headed this morning?" Mays asked, his tone still feigning civility. Selena tilted her head, watching him. "I do mind." "You got something to hide?" Reed pushed. "Just my patience." Reed's jaw tightened. "You think you can walk around here like you own the place, barking orders with your combat pets?" Selena's expression stayed neutral, but the corner of her mouth lifted ever so slightly. "I don't need to bark, Officer Reed. That's your specialty, isn't it?" It was too subtle for anyone else to notice, but she saw it. The flash in his eyes. The way his shoulder twitched. He was itching to make this something it wasn't, or it may have already been. Mays sensed it too. He reached for his partner's arm. "Let it go," he muttered. But Reed wasn't backing down. "Let me guess. You think your time overseas makes you untouchable, like you're still operating in hostile territory?" Selena's eyes darkened. "I don't operate in hostile territory. I survive it." And then, like clockwork, it shifted. A second patrol unit turned the corner. No lights, no sirens, just parked at the opposite end of the block. Unmarked. That was no coincidence. "You brought backup?" Selena asked quietly. Reed smirked. "In case things got out of hand." Selena didn't flinch. "Funny. That's exactly what I was thinking." Titan let out a low, sustained growl. Echo matched him, stepping slightly forward. Mays held his hands up, feigning innocence. "All right, that's enough. No one's trying to cause trouble here." "You already did," Selena said. "Now take a step back before my dogs decide to interpret your body language for what it is." Reed opened his mouth to speak, then stopped, because a phone was raised from across the street. A woman in a housecoat, standing on her porch, recording. Selena turned her head slightly, just enough for Mays and Reed to know. This was no longer their quiet power play. They were visible now. And visibility changes everything. "Have a good day, officers," Selena said, her voice silk over steel. She turned her back on them and walked away. Titan and Echo flanking her like shadows. They didn't follow, but she knew it was far from over. That night, Selena sat at her dining table, lit only by the glow of a laptop screen. The video had gone up already. That woman on the porch had wasted no time. It wasn't viral, not yet, but it was catching attention in the right circles. Especially with the caption, "This is how they treat decorated veterans with service dogs in our neighborhood." She watched the clip once, then again. It was enough to spark a conversation, but not a movement, not yet. She closed the laptop and reached for her burner phone. Time to call in a favor. Only a few people knew her by her full name from her time in the SEALs. Even fewer owed her. But the right one picked up on the second ring. "Torres," said the voice on the other end. "Didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I need digital eyes," she said. "Body cam footage. Traffic cams. Anything that shows my block this morning?" "Trouble?" Selena glanced at her dogs. Titan snored softly. Echo sis till alert near the door. "Not yet," she said, "but it's circling." Selena Torres didn't sleep that night. Not really. Her body rested, yes, but her mind never shut off. The next morning, just as the first blush of sun painted the windows gold, her phone buzzed. One message. No sender ID. Just a link and a timestamp. She opened it. It was grainy footage, security cam from a driveway ring system. One angle, wide enough to capture her, Titan, and Echo on the sidewalk. And more importantly, wide enough to capture Officers Mays and Reed stepping too close. No justification, no probable cause, no command, just calculated encroachment. She tapped again. Second clip. Another angle. A neighbor's nest cam this time. Captured the moment Reed's hand ghosted near his holster. Subtle, almost unnoticeable. But to someone trained like Selena, it screamed intention. Third clip. The porch video that had already made the rounds online is now updated, stabilized, and captioned. Whoever had sent this to her wasn't just good. They were surgical. She picked up the burner and typed quickly, "Got it, thanks." A reply came almost instantly. "Not just footage. You need voices. I'm working on the audio pull from their dash cam. Stay tuned." Selena leaned back in her chair, mind racing. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. She was being targeted. And now she had the first embers of proof. But evidence alone didn't make people care. What she needed was attention. Public attention. And that meant risk. Later that afternoon, Selena arrived at the small office of her old friend, Iris Chen, an investigative journalist with more integrity than most networks combined. Iris didn't need a trending hashtag to chase a lead. She needed one thing. The truth. "I haven't seen that look on your face since Bagram," Iris said quietly, waving her into the office. "What happened?" Selena didn't sit. She handed her the USB drive. "Proof. Body cam, civ cam. No audio yet, but it's on the way. I was followed, harassed, and baited. And the moment I stood up to it, they started rewriting the narrative." Iris plugged the drive in, her brow furrowing as the videos began to play. The room grew quieter with every passing second. Jesus, they're not even pretending to be subtle. They think they're above accountability. They usually are. Not this time. Selena's voice was low but edged like steel. Iris looked up. "Are you going public?" "I'm thinking about it." "Think faster," Iris said. "Because if I can see what this is, they can too. If they find out you're building a case, they won't just push back, they'll bury it. Let them try." But deep down, Selena knew Iris was right. That evening, a new video surfaced on the internet. Not from Iris, not from Selena. It came from a so-called citizen watchdog account. Anonymous, slickly edited, and well-connected. It featured a slowed-down loop of the sidewalk confrontation with text overlaid. "Trained dogs, former SEAL. But they say she was the threat?" Justice. For Selena, Torah's truth. It was shared over 40,000 times in the first 3 hours. By morning, that number had doubled. And then the messages started. Some were supportive, survivors of racial profiling, women veterans, quiet thank yous from people who never thought someone like them would be seen. But others were uglier. Veiled threats, doctored screenshots, accusations. One anonymous DM simply read, "We know where your sister lives." Selena's pulse didn't spike. She didn't tremble. But she copied the message, encrypted it, and stored it away. Because a threat that specific always meant something. Across town, Gina, Selena's younger sister and a data analyst, was working late. Her monitor glowed softly in the dark room, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she sifted through scraped badge logs and redacted personnel files. She'd been digging ever since Selena first told her something wasn't right with those officers. At first, she thought it was standard intimidation. Ugly, but not uncommon. Then she found it. Not in their personnel files, not in the usual reports. It was buried in the restricted access database used by internal investigators, Names of officers flagged but not charged. Reed was on it. So was Mays. Both were flagged for excessive force in separate precincts. Both transferred shortly after. No charges. No formal reprimands. Just quiet reassignments. Classic. Gina's heart pounded as she snapped screenshots and encrypted them. This wasn't just a case of a bad apple. This was a pattern. And someone was protecting it. She hit send, firing the files off to both Selena and Iris, then locked her laptop. She didn't see the car idling outside her building. Back in her home, Selena studied the messages that were coming in more quickly now. Some offered interviews, some asked for public statements, and then there was the anonymous source who dropped the final piece, an intercepted radio clip. She clicked play. Just keep her under pressure. If she pushes back, we've got grounds. Doesn't matter how clean she is, the optics are already on our side. It was Mays. She rewound it, played it again. Slower. The voice was unmistakable. They weren't just threatening her. They were crafting the trap, using her military background, her dogs, and her silence to paint her as unstable, dangerous, predictable. But they underestimated one thing. Selena wasn't predictable. She was surgical. At 3:47 a.m., Selena uploaded a private dossier to 3 secure platforms, 2 journalists she trusted, and 1 human rights attorney specializing in abuse of power cases. She added a short message. If I disappear, this goes public. All of it. She attached everything. Videos, screenshots, transcripts, even the threats. Then she sat in silence, breathing slowly and steadily, listening to the dogs shift in their sleep beside her. The next phase was coming. Not a confrontation. Not yet. But a fracture. And fractures always reveal what's beneath the surface. The morning news didn't just mention her name. It led with it. Former Navy SEAL Selena Torres at the center of escalating police misconduct scandal, one anchor declared. Behind her, looping footage showed Selena standing rigid on the sidewalk, both hands visible, her German shepherds poised and unmoving beside her. The officers in the clip, Mays and Reed, looked far less composed. It played again. And again. Selena, silent, but firm. Mays, inching toward his belt. Echo's eyes locked on him, alert but controlled. It was a dance of tension that the public, for once, could see clearly, and it was unraveling the narrative officers had tried to spin. On social media, the tide had turned. Torres' truth was trending. So was #Echo and Titan. And beneath those hashtags, people weren't just commenting. They were organizing. By noon, news vans crowded the street where it had all started. Reporters jostled for angles near the sidewalk, while neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Some offered timid nods of support. Others kept their eyes averted. But the air had changed. The fear was still there. But so was the curiosity. The hope. Selena didn't give them a spectacle. She stood on her porch in a gray zip-up hoodie and jeans, Echo and Titan sitting beside her. She didn't smile. Didn't wave. She didn't have to. Her presence alone, silent, unshaken, spoke volumes. Inside, her phone buzzed. Iris again. CNN wants an exclusive. They're pushing for a sit-down. Live. Selena stared at the message for a long moment. Not yet, she typed back. Too soon. Let the story build. Let them chase. The more the public leaned in, the more the truth would reveal itself. That was the strategy. She'd learned patience in war zones. This wasn't so different. Across town, in a stuffy precinct conference room, Captain Ronald Reese watched the footage for the 5th time. His jaw clenched as he hit pause right on the moment Reed's hand hovered an inch too close to his holster. "This is a problem," he muttered. Detective Karen Baylor, Internal Affairs, nodded tightly beside him. "More than a problem," she said. "It's a wildfire." "Why the hell didn't anyone tell me about her background?" "She's not just a vet," Baylor said. "She was Tier 1, the real deal. SEAL Team 4, decorated. Quiet discharge 5 years ago, spotless since." Reese exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "And now she's all over the news, with body cam footage, and civilian clips, and leaked comms audio." Baylor didn't respond. She didn't need to. Reese stood and paced the room. "Pull Mays and Reed from duty. Effective immediately. Put them on administrative leave and keep them quiet. No statements. They've already lawyered up. Then make it clear to their lawyers, if this blows back any further, they're taking the fall." Baylor raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll stay quiet?" "No," Reese said, "but we just need to buy time." Outside the room, the hallway was a hive of whispers and darting eyes. The precinct wasn't used to scrutiny, especially not the kind that came with satellite trucks and national headlines. Meanwhile, Selena received a new message from Gina. "I traced the voice from the intercepted comms. Confirmed. It was Reed." Attached was the audio file, cleaned up and processed. The voice was more unmistakable now, stripped of static. "She's smart. Trained. That's why we need to make her look unstable." Selena played it again. And again. Each time, it scraped against her like glass. Not just intimidation, not just profiling. This was premeditated narrative control. They were planning to dismantle her in the public eye before she even had a chance to defend herself. But now the world was watching, and the officers were squirming beneath the glare. That evening, Iris dropped a gift. A package. Unmarked. Inside, a small hard drive. Footage from a third angle, previously unreleased. It showed what none of the others had captured clearly. Reed signaling to Mays before stepping forward. A subtle gesture, but now damning. A calculated move. Not a reaction. Not fear. Predation. Selena uploaded it anonymously through a verified account with over 400,000 followers, one that focused on exposing institutional abuse. She wrote only one sentence beneath the video. "This is how they prepare for the fall before the strike." Within 20 minutes, it had 1.2 million views. Elsewhere, inside a quiet apartment, Officer Mays stared at the screen. His hands trembled. "They weren't supposed to release this," he whispered. His girlfriend, sitting at the edge of the couch, pulled away from him slightly. "You lied," she said, eyes wide. "You said she lunged. You said it was self-defense." Mays didn't answer, because the truth was now louder than the excuses. Back in her home, Selena sat beside Echo and Titan. They were quiet. Steady. She scratched behind Echo's ear, watching the view count climb. She didn't feel victorious, not yet. There was still too much damage to repair. Still, too many people are willing to believe the worst because of the way she looked or the way her dogs moved. But now the storm had reached a flashpoint. Now even the people who didn't want to care had to. Because the question wasn't just what happened to her. It was, how often does this happen and we just don't see it? Outside her home, the press had grown bolder. One reporter called out, "Ms. Torres, do you feel vindicated?" She paused, turned, then spoke just once. "I feel seen. That's a start." And then she walked back inside. Behind her, the world kept watching. And the system began to crack. By the time the city council held its emergency session, the atmosphere had already shifted. Outside the chambers, protesters stood shoulder to shoulder, some holding signs with Selena's image beside Echo and Titan, others with only bold lettering that read, "Silence is complicity." Justice for Selena Torres. Reform now. Inside, the tension hung like a cloud of smoke. Council members glanced uneasily at each other as murmurs from the gallery swelled. Their podiums were usually stages for hollow declarations, but today, the audience wasn't willing to be placated with half measures. A new pressure had taken root, the kind born not just from public outrage, but from proof. And Selena had delivered it. The footage was now being picked up by major networks nationwide. CNN ran a whole segment titled, "Targeted on the Sidewalk: How Selena Torres Exposed a Department's Rot." On MSNBC, a former JAG attorney called the officer's actions a textbook abuse of authority. Meanwhile, Reddit had turned her into a symbol. Memes flooded timelines. Echo sitting stoically in front of a protest banner. Titan mid-leap, edited like a superhero. Selena in grayscale, with the caption, "She fought wars abroad. Now she fights one at home." Back at the precinct, cracks weren't just forming, they were spreading. Detective Maria Langston, long buried in the department's tech crimes unit, watched the news unfold from her office. She'd known Reed for years. They weren't friends, but they'd shared cases. Paper trails, financial investigations, quiet arrests no one saw coming. She had a feeling. And feelings were dangerous in this building. But this time, she acted on it. Langston opened a secured archive and pulled Reed's badge data. His incident reports from the past 6 years showed an uncanny trend. Of 19 civilian complaints filed against him, 14 had been closed without a single interview conducted. 4 complainants had mysteriously withdrawn. 1, now deceased. Langston's jaw tightened. She printed the report, slid it into a folder, then closed her office door for the first time in 5 years. The system, she realized, had protected Reed for too long. And maybe, just maybe, it was time someone in it finally said no more. At the same time, Gina Torres sat cross-legged on the floor of her apartment, her laptop open, surrounded by Red Bull cans and flash drives. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she compiled a timeline of events from the day of the incident forward. Bodycam footage, dispatch audio, eyewitness videos, Selena's military records, Reed's sealed complaints, thanks to a quiet leak she'd accidentally stumbled upon. Her thread went live at 11:03 a.m. By 11:22, it had over 250,000 shares. By noon, even the mayor had reposted it, with the caption, "This is not who we are, but it is who we've allowed ourselves to become. No more." Inside Selena's home, the blinds mainly remained closed, but the weight in the air had changed. She could feel it, not as a celebration, not yet, but as motion. Things were moving. She sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, Echo's head resting on her feet. Titan sprawled across the back door like a silent guardian. On her screen was a paused video from the city council session. One of the members, a black woman named Council Member Regina Clark, had just concluded her speech. Her expression was firm, eyes steady with controlled fire. Selena clicked play. Clark's voice filled the room. When someone like Selena Torres is targeted, it's not an anomaly. It's a reflection. A mirror we've tried too long to turn away from, but we don't get to turn away anymore. Applause erupted in the chamber. Clark didn't smile. She didn't bask in it. She simply nodded once and stepped back from the microphone. Selena closed the video and leaned back in her chair. Her breath came slower now. Not relaxed, but steady. The kind of breath that came after a breach had finally begun to give. Later that evening, she met with Detective Darnell again. This time, not in a secret safe house, but in a private office 2 floors above City Hall. Darnell looked different, worn, but lighter. There was a file on the desk between them, thick, stapled, stamped, Internal Affairs, Priority Review. "They've opened a formal inquiry into Reed," Darnell said, sliding the file forward. "And Mays, and 4 other officers tied to a suppression ring we believe was coordinating false reports." Selena raised an eyebrow. "A ring? We don't know how far it goes, but there's chatter. And it's not just your case. Turns out your incident is a thread in a much larger pattern." Selena stared at the file. "And what happens when you pull too hard on a thread?" she asked. Darnell leaned forward, her voice low. "The whole damn sweater unravels." Outside, the world kept talking, kept questioning. The silence that once insulated bad cops was now fraying. Publicly. Embarrassingly. Selena's image had become more than a symbol. It had become a question people were afraid to ignore. How many other Selena Torreses never had cameras rolling? How many people had walked their dogs in peace and didn't make it home? And how many police departments had quietly buried the truth beneath layers of red tape and internal reviews? That night, Gina's phone lit up with a message. "Unknown number. Encrypted. You made a hell of a dent. She did more. It's not over, but now it's loud enough to hurt. Stay ready." Gina stared at it for a long time, then typed 2 words. "We are." Across the city, lights flickered on above a courthouse rotunda. Papers were being filed, depositions scheduled, subpoenas signed. The system wasn't falling yet, but it was groaning. It was listening. And Selena Torres, the woman who once walked invisible through her neighborhood, now stood at the center of a story no one could ignore. She hadn't won yet, but for the first time, the system was blinking, and the mask was slipping. She knew what it meant when the enemy began to quiet down, when eyes watched without blinking, when messages stopped coming. When doors that once creaked open suddenly slammed shut, and that's exactly what began to happen. Not on some distant battlefield overseas, but here, in the shadow of her victory. The public still chanted her name. The videos were still going viral. Journalists still flooded her inbox. But in the background, the system had begun to shift, not to reform, but to protect itself. And Selena could smell the fear turning into something uglier. It started small. A city clerk lost her disability paperwork. Her scheduled VA mental health check-in was mysteriously canceled twice. Then Gina's laptop was hacked, 3 times a week. And someone attempted to open a credit line in Selena's name, using her military ID number, a number that only one agency had access to. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She prepared. Selena had lived through Black Ops missions in places the world had long since forgotten. But this was a domestic war. One who wore suits instead of uniforms. One that used silence, not sniper fire. Paperwork instead of bullets. And it was far more dangerous than any field op she'd ever run. By midweek, she noticed a white, unmarked sedan parked across from her house. Same model, same tint, different license plates each day. Echo growled every time it appeared. Titan would sit at the window, unblinking. Selena said nothing. She simply moved her weapons cache closer to the front door. Detective Darnell felt it too. She'd been reassigned, not fired, not reprimanded. Just redirected. A quiet little desk upstairs in the department's historical records unit, the place they send people when they don't want them gone, but want them silenced. No press briefings, no access to open case logs, no jurisdiction. When she questioned it, her superior said, "Just a reshuffle. No need to make this political, Lee." But Darnell wasn't a fool. She'd seen this tactic used before. You don't always need to crush someone loudly. You just isolate them until they fold. And still, they pushed back. Selena and Gina released a second batch of evidence. This time, not just body cam footage, but the names of victims who had filed complaints against Officer Reed in years past, redacted where necessary, but raw and devastating. There were patterns. Young black men are accused of resisting without cause. Latino teens are stopped and frisked near schools. One woman with a concussion after being detained for her safety. All swept under the rug, all buried beneath official reports that said, no wrongdoing found. This time, the story hit national prime time. One anchor leaned forward on live TV and asked, if this happened to a decorated veteran walking her dogs, what happens to people who don't have a voice? It was a moment. Sharp, public, and impossible to ignore. That night, Selena's back window was shattered. No forced entry, no burglary, just a brick, wrapped in duct tape, and inside, a single piece of paper. Typed. No signature, no heading. Enough. Walk away, or you won't see the next one coming. Selena read it without blinking. Echo sat beside her, a low growl vibrating deep in his chest. Titan paced slowly in front of the door, restless. She didn't call the police. She called Darnell. They met in an underground garage. No surveillance, no badge, no formalities. Selena tossed the note on the hood of Darnell's car. Darnell read it. Folded it once, slid it into her coat. This isn't just blowback, she said quietly. This is the system reinforcing itself. I know, Selena replied. We hit something real, Darnell continued. And now the whole damn institution is closing ranks. Selena looked her in the eye. Then we don't back down. We push harder. Darnell nodded, but her eyes were tired. Just be ready, Torres. This time they won't come at you with a badge. They'll come with lawyers, with discrediting campaigns, with anonymous tips to the media. Selena's mouth twitched in a humorless smile. Then I'll be ready with something louder. And she was. The following day, she published a 17-minute video statement. No background music, no dramatics. Just her face, her voice, her truth. She spoke about her military career, about being stopped, about the taser, the bruises, the humiliation. And then she stared into the camera and said, I did not start this fight, but I will finish it. Because for every person who doesn't have the training I do, the dogs I do, the luck I had to walk away alive, they deserve better. You deserve better, and we will not be silenced. Within 3 hours, it had over 2 million views. By midnight, it had gone global, but not everyone was cheering. A whisper campaign began. She has PTSD. She's unstable. She set them up. It was bait. A right-wing commentator said she had weaponized her service record. A manipulative soldier turned activist. Selena watched it play on a muted screen at a gas station and felt nothing, except resolve. 2 days later, she walked into a town hall meeting uninvited. People turned. Some applauded. Others watched warily. She took the microphone from the moderator, calmly, and said, To the officers who say this made your jobs harder. Good. It should. Policing should never be easy when it's done wrong. To the scared citizens, this will divide us. I ask, who divided us first? Who drew the line between protector and predator? And to the officials still hiding behind bureaucracy and badges, I'm not going away. Not until every lie is named, every abuser exposed, and every good cop proves it by standing with us. Silence followed. Then a voice in the crowd said, We're with you, Selena. Another. "We see you." And then the room rose to their feet. Not everyone. But enough. Enough to remind her that while the machine fought back, the people were waking up. She returned home that night. The dogs curled at her feet. The windows boarded. The locks were checked. Her world is smaller than before, tighter, more dangerous, but also more real. Selena Torres knew the war had changed. This wasn't about clearing her name anymore. This was about dragging the truth into the light, even if it meant walking through the dark. It began as a ripple. One post, one story, one woman. But ripples have a way of growing. And by the time Selena Torres stepped onto that courthouse plaza, it wasn't just her name on their signs. It was all their names. And the ripple had become a wave. There were hundreds, maybe more. Parents holding portraits of children brutalized by police. Veterans wearing service medals over protest shirts. Teens with handwritten signs, "I am Selena." Veteran, woman, targeted. Who's next? They filled the steps of City Hall, wrapped around the Justice Center, poured into every crevice of the street like water-defying containment. Camera crews scrambled to keep up. Drone footage showed a living mosaic of outrage, but also of clarity. This wasn't chaos. This was an order being rewritten. Selena stood quietly at the edge of it all. She wasn't holding a mic. She wasn't giving a speech. She was listening. And what she heard was louder than any rallying cry. People, ordinary people, telling their own stories, out loud, in public, for the first time. He shoved me because I asked for his badge number. My brother was stopped 15 times in 1 year. They told me it was standard procedure to put a knee in my back. No more whispers in parking lots. No more sealed complaints. This time, the city heard them. Detective Darnell watched it unfold from across the square. She'd spent years trying to crack the shield of silence inside the force. But Selena's video, the documents Gina had dug up, and the fearless witnesses now speaking into cameras, they'd done something she never could. They had pierced the illusion. The illusion that this was about just a few bad actors. The illusion that the department's rot was incidental, not systemic. And now, even her superiors couldn't control the narrative. The pressure was mounting, and the system was cracking. The mayor called an emergency press conference. He stood stiffly at the podium, flanked by nervous city officials. His tone was polished, but his eyes betrayed the panic behind the curtain. "We take these allegations seriously. We believe in transparency. We will launch a full internal investigation." The crowd wasn't buying it. The words were too clean, too familiar, too rehearsed. Selena stepped forward, and the crowd fell into silence. No microphone, no podium. Just her, standing on the courthouse steps with Titan and Echo at her side. Her voice was unmistakable. Her message is sharper than any policy memo. You don't get to talk about accountability without acknowledging complicity. You don't get to call for peace when you stayed silent through violence. And you don't get to hide behind investigations that bury the truth under bureaucracy. The air thickened. The mayor shifted. Cameras leaned in. Selena held the moment in her hands. This isn't a request anymore. This is a reckoning. You either help us build a new system, or we will tear down the one that protects you. And just like that, the mayor stepped back, literally, figuratively, because he knew. There was no putting the fire out with statements. That night, internal affairs officers arrived at the 4th precinct. No warning, no smiles. They walked in with federal observers and sealed boxes marked evidence. Files were pulled, hard drives confiscated, officers questioned. Detective Lee Darnell was reinstated without fanfare, but with full investigative authority. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak to reporters. She rolled up her sleeves and began what she called a forensic truth-telling. And the first name on her inquiry? Officer Matthew Reed. Meanwhile, Gina's footage, raw, unedited, time-stamped, made its way to national networks. She hadn't sold it. She'd released it. To everyone. At once. A coordinated media release that hit every major outlet within 12 hours. The footage spoke for itself. Rickson's mocking voice, the casual hand resting on his gun. The barked orders were laced with contempt. The gunshot, the chaos, the calm in Selena's voice as she pleaded with them to stop. And then, the twist no one could deny. The moment her dogs retreated on command. Trained, disciplined, controlled. Not attack dogs. Service dogs. The footage went viral, again. But this time it wasn't just activist circles. It was mainstream. Military groups issued statements of support. Veterans associations launched petitions. Even conservative pundits began backpedaling, unsure how to frame a Navy vet surviving a violent, unjust takedown. The message became clear. This wasn't left or right. This was right or wrong. Reed disappeared from public view. His lawyer released a statement calling the situation complex and over-politicized. But no one was listening anymore. Because something else had taken hold. Something deeper than rage, deeper than headlines. Belief. Belief that truth could survive, that justice could be clawed from the jaws of corruption, and that someone, finally, might pay for the pain they caused. Selena wasn't naive. She knew the machine would adapt, that the serpents inside the system wouldn't vanish overnight. But something had changed. People had stopped whispering, stopped waiting, stopped doubting their pain. And that shift, that turning tide, was more potent than any baton or badge. It was culture shifting in real time, and she could feel it. Everywhere. Late one night, as she walked Titan along the same cracked sidewalk where it had all started, she noticed something new. A chalk drawing. Simple. Childlike. A stick figure woman with two big dogs beside her. And above it, in wobbly, colorful letters, "Thank you, Ms. Selena." She knelt, her hand brushing the edge of the drawing. Titan nuzzled her shoulder. The street was quiet. But for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel like danger. It felt like peace. What happened to Selena Torres should never have happened. Not on a sidewalk, not in broad daylight, not in a so-called free country. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't break any laws. She walked her dogs, just like she had every morning since moving into that neighborhood. But for two officers, that was all the justification they needed. Two trained dogs, a calm black woman. That was enough for them to brand her a threat. They didn't care about her service. They didn't care about her discipline. They didn't care about the truth. They had a narrative, and they tried to force her into it. And when she didn't comply, they escalated. First with intimidation, then with proximity, then with a gun, and finally with a smear campaign designed to bury her credibility and silence her voice. But they failed. Because Selena didn't just survive, she exposed them. She exposed the lie of just doing our job. She exposed the illusion of protect and serve. And in doing so, she reminded all of us, it's not just about the uniform you wear, it's about the power you hold and how you choose to use it. If someone like Selena, a decorated veteran, a trained SEAL, a woman who's spent her entire life protecting others, can be targeted, profiled, harassed, and threatened simply because of the color of her skin, then what does that say about the safety of the rest of us? This story isn't just about injustice. It's about how easily systems turn silent when they're the ones being questioned. How institutions meant to protect can twist into weapons of control. How truth is only heard when it's too loud to ignore. Let that sink in. Now ask yourself, how many other Selena Torreses have there been, without a camera, without proof, without a platform? That's the real question. And that's why we tell these stories. Because silence protects no one. Because dignity shouldn't have to be earned. Because justice shouldn't depend on rank, uniform, or a viral video. Selena Torres didn't choose to become a symbol. But when the system tried to break her, she became one anyway. And now it's up to us, all of us, to carry that fire forward. If this story moved you, click like. If it made you angry, say something in the comments. And if you believe the world needs more truth like this, subscribe to the channel. Because this isn't the last time we'll need to stand up. It won't be the last time someone like Selena needs our voices, but it can be the last time we ignore it. Don't just watch injustice. Call it out, speak it out, burn it out. Together, we don't just tell the story, we become the reckoning.